Now introducing the Minor Wisdom Trio!
Minor Wisdom!
Hey. I feel like it's Pat. I'm in like something that looks like Pat right now from Saturday Night Live. But anyway, I've got Matthew Roy Rodriguez on this week, and I had him on because he's gonna be entering into the world of education, and also he, like, I don't know, there it is, abrupt end. He listens to the podcast. Weird. It's so crazy. Like, there are people that listen to this, but I had a blast talking to him. I've met him now, actually, since we've recorded this. We've had T-Tech, and he came to T-Tech, so I got to see him there. I didn't talk to him very much, but he seemed to be rather busy, as you should be at T-Tech, and running around, going to different workshops and all that kind of good stuff. And he's entering into this world. He's not yet quite fully into this world of theater education, but he kind of is in a way, and we get into that, but he's been at the Carmia Theater, and I'm butchering how you say that because it should be said with a very with a dialect, with a Hispanic kind of tinge. Is it twinge or I don't know, but it should have a obviously not a Jewish white German man's take on it. So, but he has been with them for quite some time, and is now gonna dive into the world of education. And it's a different perspective, you know. It's a perspective similar to the students that I have at the University of Houston, but also he's got years and years and years of professional experience and even some experience in education, just not like immersed in one classroom where you teach the same kids for 180 days, right? So super excited to have talked to him. I will say this is the last interview I have in the can, so I will do my very best to get interviews done over the next couple of days and weeks. I know I've got some planned for spring break, which is not for another month or so. But you know, this may be a little bit of a break. It may not. I'm going to reach out to some people and see what I can do and see if I have time to, our schedules can match up. I don't want to say I don't have time. I just may not have the same time as other people, right? So we are heavy into UIL one act play season, and I had the fortune. Now I've shat on. My daughter yesterday asked me what shat, if shat's a bad word. And I said, well, I mean, you don't want to like say to your teacher like I just shat, but it's one that I'll let you get away with, right? Anyway, but I have shat on some situations that I have seen over the past couple of weeks at different schools and different places, but I want to praise one. So, and I'll name this one because it's a praise, but I went to Bel Air High School yesterday as I'm recording this, and worked on getting their lighting ready for UIL One Act Play. They're hosting. Not getting it ready for their show, just getting it ready for hosting, just for the record there. I'm also the contest manager for that space, so I do have a little bit of invested interest, but everything was great. You know, the one negative has nothing to do with them, and that is that the plot was hung by people that don't know how to hang the plot, like initially, because it's a brand new space. And so some people came in and said, here's your lighting package, we're going to hang it for you. And they just hung stuff, right? And I didn't have the kind of time to just, because when I go in and completely rehang a theater, I like to strip everything down, take everything off, and then go from there, right? And the only reason I didn't do that, I could have done that with front of house, but I didn't do it over stage because it was a counterweight system. If it was a wench system, I would have done it. It would have been rather simple. But with a counterweight system, if you strip everything down, obviously you have to strip the arbor, especially when you have that much weight. Like, you could tie it off, but not with that much weight. I wouldn't be comfortable with it. But so it would take some time, right? Not time that I had. So I made do with what they had hung, and it wasn't bad. And they have decent instrumentation. They they don't have Source 4s. What? And they don't even have all LEDs. What? They have the Strand package, and I'm not going to lie, the Strand lights that they created, their Lecos, I like more than a Source 4. I really do. They just seem like a better light. It's a better piece of technology, and again, it's just an incandescent light, but I really liked it a lot more than the Source 4, and I've used them before. This wasn't my first time, but they also, tied up some cables, and they just kept everything up. Nothing was dirty and gross, and so kudos to the staff at Bel Air High School. It's, I like going into spaces where I don't have to say, shame on you, tisk tisk, and I didn't have to do that here. It was a well-kept space. It's a really nice space, actually, because the whole school, I want to say the school itself has been around for like almost 100 years. It's been around for a long time, maybe not that long, but probably 80 at least. And they just completely tore it down and built a brand new one. And they did all that while not leaving the school. Like they built the new one while the old one was still there. And it was just a well done process, I thought. I'm sure people on the inside are like, this was wrong and that was wrong. But from the outside, because my mother went there. My sister lives near the school. So I've been able to witness it at least from the outside. So well done to Bel Air High School and whoever kind of playing that one. So I will say it does look very sterile inside. It looks like you're in a hospital. They haven't really decorated it yet, but it doesn't smell like a hospital. That's good, and there's nobody dying at Bel Air High School, so that's good too. So anyway, moving on from that. Also this week, so last week my daughters had strep, and their symptoms were stomach aches, and so I started getting a stomach ache. And I thought, ruh-roh. And I just thought I'd plow through because I'm not a medication type of guy. I'm not an anti-vaxxer by any means, but I think I'm afraid of medication, not because of what it does, what it's meant to do, but it's the schedule. Like now, oh man, I forgot to take my like that kind of thing. It has nothing to do with medication helping me, which just sounds stupid, I know. But I didn't go to the doctor, and then finally, it wasn't so much a stomach ache as it was a nagging feeling inside my tums. So I finally went to an urgent care. They weren't very helpful. Then I made an appointment, a teledoc, if you will. I think they call it telemedicine at Kelsey-Seybold. Got a referral for a GI, went to the GI, and the GI said, well, you got to go on the FODMAP diet for a little bit. The FODMAP diet is stressful AF, bruh. I think once I get the ball rolling, it'll be fine. But I'm on this FODMAP diet. If you don't know what it is, look it up. But there are things you can't have because your body doesn't break it down as easily. And so, like, when you're on the FODMAP diet, you're supposed to cut out a ton of stuff, and then you reintroduce piece by piece, food by food, to figure out what it is that bothers you. And if you start having a little tummy ache, don't eat apples. If you start having a tummy ache, don't eat cauliflower. There are different things like that. And it really sucks, especially now that my entire family is vegetarian, and a ton of vegetables and fruits are high in FOD. So you can't eat that stuff. It's very much a crackers, cheese, meat, potato type of diet. And, my family doesn't eat meat. So it's really tough. And we'll make it work. We shall overcome. But it's going to be a rough couple of weeks while I get on this diet and then start reintroducing things that my body will tolerate. Now, it may not be FOD, but we're going to try that for now. Okay. Enough about me. Let's talk about Matthew Roy Rodriguez. I left in, sometimes the people will say their name right at the beginning and I cut that out. I left this in out of kind of, I don't know if it's respect. I don't know what it is, but he says his name in his the way it's supposed to be said. Because again, I'm big on, if you have a student in your class and you're saying their name wrong, get it right, right? Don't continue to say their name wrong. If it's, maybe I'm big on that because my daughter's Ava Lynn, and most people call her Evelyn because they're stupid, and whatever. So I left his name in so that you can hear the way that it's supposed to be said, not Matthew Roy Rodriguez, right? Like a stupid white guy. So I hope you enjoyed this interview. It was fun for me. It was fun for him. I appreciate his fandom of this podcast. Again, I hope I'm here next week with you guys. If not, it'll be a couple weeks, and I will be back. And maybe I'll play some Backstreet Boys. But ladies and gentlemen, have fun. Be safe this week. Klein ISD, glad you're out all week. Good for you. And enjoy this interview. Bye.
My name is Matthew Roy Rodriguez, and I was born and raised in Brownsville, Texas. So for a lot of people that aren't familiar with the Lower Valley, I often tell them it's by South Padre Island, and then that light bulb goes off, and they go, "Oh, I know where that's at." And then they realize, now living in Dallas, like, that's a long drive. And I said, "Yep, it's a long drive to some authentic, Mexican tacos here and there." But yeah, so I grew up in Brownsville. I am the eldest of three children, which meant that there was always a lot of pressure kind of growing up to be the best and to do the best. I am a child of educators. My mom was a school teacher for many years and then moved into the administration. And then my dad has always kind of stayed working at the high school level as a sports coach and a history teacher, which is ironic because I do not like anything about sports and football or baseball. In fact, the few times I did play baseball, my coaches would get mad at me because I was looking at the ants in the dirt. So, but yeah, so I grew up in this kind of rich culture of being Mexican and being brown, but without kind of recognizing the value of my culture, because in Brownsville and in the Lower Valley, it kind of felt like it was its own little hub in itself, this own kind of bubble. So it wasn't until I got older and started exploring, different cities, Dallas, Washington, D.C., that I just kind of felt like, oh my gosh, there's, people that don't look like me in this world, or sound like me. So that was, a great kind of way into starting my curiosity of other cultures, but of just ways that we kind of think and the ways that we kind of approach each other. So in middle school, so I started with band. So the kind of fine arts has always been around me. And at that time, my mom was the assistant principal at the high school that I ended up going to. And she was in charge of all of the different fine arts programs there. So in terms of like theater, choir, band, estudiantina, I was kind of thrown into it from a very young age. So, fine arts was always, in kind of my blood since a very early age. And then eventually I went to that high school and I did the fun balancing act of doing theater and marching band at the same time for all 4 years, while also trying to be the best at academics, because there's a weird kind of maybe it's because it's the valley, or our parents just always want the best for us, but there was this weird competition between all of the top students. Like, no, we need to be the top 10 students, we need to be the best that we can possibly be. So managing all the different extracurricular activities on top of my schoolwork was always a great kind of balancing act, which actually led me to I think be somewhat successful at the craziness that is my world now. So I graduated from Brownsville, and then I moved up to North Texas to attend the University of North Texas, where I obtained a Bachelor of Arts in Theater Performance. I was very fortunate in my studies because I was able to essentially knock out a full year of college. So I did my undergrad in 3 years, and I graduated at 20 years old. And really, I kind of did really 2.5 years of actual studying, because that last semester, I essentially was getting professional, full-time school credit for the work that I was doing professionally, whether that was at the different local theater companies. So on my kind of assistant directing, any kind of work that I was doing, working with educational departments, I was getting professional, or 3-hour credits. So for a lot of students, they were having to take all these additional advanced hours in their undergrad, and I was just working, like quite literally doing, what I was putting what I was studying. So I graduated, and then right away, I kind of had this idea that I wanted my fourth year of college, what would be my fourth year of college to be still training for me. So I took up an apprenticeship at the Cleveland Playhouse. So going from South Texas to Dallas and then all the way to Cleveland, Ohio was a big kind of a cultural shift for me, especially when it came to snow and winter and just driving. Because all of a sudden I was like, oh, it's like October 1st and it's freezing over here. And then it was October like 20th and it's snowing. So so that was a big kind of shock for me. And it's another kind of task to kind of figure out. And then I eventually took on, I was there for about 9 months at the Cleveland Playhouse working in the education department. And then I took on a job back in Texas, in Dallas, at Academia Theater Company, where I served as the associate oh my gosh, what was my title? Artistic assistant and communications coordinator. So I did that for about 3 years, and then I transitioned into a role of associate artistic producer, which more kind of leadership responsibility and more kind of producing on that end. But through and through, I've been able to see the growth of not only the organization but just of myself, and the way that we are reaching communities and actually, doing the work that's intentional and meaningful, which kind of led me to now pursue a Master's of Science here at the University of North Texas. It's a Master's of Science in Digital Communication Analytics. And a lot of folks are like, why are you doing that? And I kind of felt that, going to school to either get a master's in arts administration, people are like, some professionals were saying, you're already doing that. You already have producers from Los Angeles and from New York on your phone, which is what some people go to grad school for, is to get those kind of connections or to get that kind of professional work or that next step. And I was doing that at 21 years old, so my kind of reasoning for getting that, for getting this degree, is how we're reaching people. Like I said, reaching people that may not have experience in one culture, but just the fine arts, is something that kind of drives me. Just because it's something that I was exposed to at a very early age, and there's a value, of that kind of work, which kind of leads me into, I think, my next step of my life, which is getting my alternative teaching certification, so that I can transition into the classroom. I can kind of continue, or share my my love of arts and culture, and just work with the next generation of students.
Man, you seem to have your stuff together. So very good. So I wrote down a few questions. First of all, you sort of glossed over this, but what was it about theater that attracted you? Like, what you just said, I did it in high school along with marching band. First of all, what did you play in marching band?
I played the trombone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. And so, so what was it about theater that grabbed you, and then it ultimately turned you into a collegiate theater artist? What was it?
Well, it ironically goes to the marching band. In
Mm,
middle school, I was one of the top uh, performers, and then in high school, I realized I was like, oh, there's like students that are really good at this.
mhm.
You know, uh, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to focus my time on theater because that's where I was like, I know I'm good at this. I felt that I was good and had a kind of a passion for it. But I always say every story matters. Now tell me why. Um, I think it's just the matter of storytelling, but also just the possibilities that theater
Yeah,
creates, that provides a platform that can be so imaginative, or that can be so moving with its simplicity. Which I guess can be kind of connected to anything, but with theater specifically, I'm now able to see stories that I would have never been exposed to. Whether it's different of backgrounds or just different experiences.
what type of theater artist do you consider yourself to be?
I like taking works that I don't know if they're necessarily classics, but kind of stripping things away,
Yeah,
and just kind of utilizing what is necessary to tell the story, whether that's just chairs, or whether that's a very kind of framed, outline of what a house could be. But I just like telling the story as truthful as it can be, and sometimes a big kind of production or big kind of house, or kind of living room set can almost take away from that. Um, but I just like telling stories and making sure that the audience um, gets taken away by something, from the show.
how so in that sort of realm of questioning, how do you decide what is necessary? Is it what the playwright says, or are there elements to a show that you realize sort of in a rehearsal process, like maybe I do need to have X, Y, and Z, or when do you decide on that stuff? Is it just organic, or is it right away?
I kind of have my vision going into it, but I really value the initial, table reads and conversations, because those, can often, at least for me, I kind of sway, one, either factor or just one kind of decision that I initially had, or how, may make me rethink, what that
Yeah.
that overarching quote goal is. But yeah, I usually try and come in with something that is at least moves me. That's why if I choose a play, or if I am choosing to support it, as in schedule and helping schedule a season, there's something that resonates with me. And whether I'm not telling that story, we hire the director that is going to hire is going to tell that story correctly. It's like, what am I taking away from it personally?
Why UNT? What made UNT the appealing place to be, and continues to be appealing to you?
um I ironically, I wasn't a very good student when it came to picking my college. My partner kind of did all the work for us. And UNT is very special in the way that they have right now they currently have two Briley resident acting companies, which are company members at the Dallas Theater Center. They have two of those company members on their full-time staff. So you have two professional actors that are working at the highest possible kind of level in the Dallas Fort Worth area in terms of a LORT theater on their staff. And then additionally, it was just it felt right with me. It felt very liberal and very community friendly without feeling as large as maybe UT did for me. And that was important because I wanted to be in classes that professors knew my name, where I can actually build meaningful relationships with professors. And not that I you can't get that experience from other institutions. It just kind of felt like it was the right place for me all around. When I did my freshman orientation, there was just a certain energy that felt very communal, but also encouraging for students to just ultimately be their best. Or if they just wanted to attend classes, they can also do that. And I think it was also just the proximity to Dallas. So then, UNT is over in Denton, which is about a 45-minute drive to Dallas, and Fort Worth. So you have, theater, and your left and your right per se. We're able to go see different works at all the different kind of professional houses in the area.
So you said you graduated when you were 20. What type of did that create some challenges for you when you moved away, went to Cleveland, and I hear jokes about I'm going to deal with this with my daughter because she's going to be 17 when she graduates high school, and people are like, that's it's going to be interesting to have to deal with being 17 and not 18 when you enter college because there are just some different challenges. Was there anything that kind of stands out for you not being sort of at that benchmark of the 21 when you went away and had to ultimately decide on your immediate future?
Yes and no. I turned 21 right before I got there. So all of a sudden I was like, great, you gotta go to the bars and you get to go to the clubs. It's like, and I get to be carded. But it wasn't that kind of that transition for me. I'm no longer in Texas. It's a different state. I'm no longer with people that necessarily look like me or kind of have a Texan or Valley mentality. It kind of forced me to grow up and to make choices in terms of, okay, I need to feed myself. And at that time, we were, they provided I chose that apprenticeship because they provided housing and all kind of living expenses covered. And we received a weekly salary. I mean, that salary was $100 a week, which isn't much. For some people, they really struggled because they needed to pay their car insurance. And I'm very fortunate and very privileged that my parents were able to take on some of those bills in terms of my insurance and my phone bill. But there are some folks that $100 needed to last them. But even for me, it's okay. I need to make sure I have food for the remainder of the week. My schedule there in Cleveland usually started around 1 or 2 and then ended around 10. So kind of still working those 8 hours, but later on in the evening, which was its own mental challenge of just kind of dealing with the fact that it gets dark at like 5:30. And I was like, oh my gosh, seasonal depression is real, and it's starting to buy those kind of lamps just so I can feel some kind of warmth and feel alive in the middle of the day, or rather the middle of the evening. But yeah, it just kind of forced me to grow up and to not necessarily fend for myself, but to start thinking, all of my actions, whether I'm going to have, spend more money drinking one night, it's going to affect if I'm going to eat, or if I need to stretch out a certain meal, for 2-3 days. So just kind of started making me think a little bit more beyond me, in terms of my immediate needs, if that makes sense.
You become resourcefulness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of your parents, it seems like they supported you when you decided theater's the path that I want. I mean, is that true? You seem to be speaking positively of them. So
Yeah, I think it's because my parents or my mom oversaw fine arts for so many
yeah.
years. It just kind of felt like it was naturally supported. When I was little, my aunt used to take care of us, and she worked at a dance studio. And so they said, "Well, you already have your 3 boys here. Might as well put them in dance." But I think my dad was more frustrated by that when we were, growing up. So I think when he saw that I was going to study theater, and I was like, okay, it's like, well, what's the worst that can happen? I've always been resourceful in making sure that all of my my work gets, put to use. So I don't think there was any ever kind of doubt that I think that some parents may have about getting a theater degree. It's like, what are you going to do with that? Because I knew that there was an entire industry that was just more than acting on stage.
Uh, what is it about education? Why do you want to go into education? And be careful, because some people, some future bosses may be listening. I'm huge in the boss world.
Um, uh, this pandemic that we just, we're still living in, and but it's also kind of moved out and really opened my eyes to a lot of the work that educators were doing, and not only serving as as an educator, but oftentimes as that second counselor, that second resource for just basic essentials for students. Um, and I was able to communicate with a lot of educators on that more personal level, because a lot of our work was remotely, and we, from Karamia's perspective, were rolled out, a series of virtual programs. So we were reaching more teachers than we ever had before. So really hearing I don't know if the struggles was it, but just their passion and their genuine love for helping their students started really resonating with me. And over the last, few years, I've been, you know, more interested. And I think the one, listening to your podcast and attending a TXETA this past, fall, really kind of made me take that decision seriously, or those kind of thoughts in my head seriously, and say, I want to do this. I want to make sure, I want to have a little bit of a impact on somebody's life, what in the classroom. I think that the arts education is necessary, or should be valued more across all kind of 1A, 2A, 3A, 6A campuses, because it's I saw that I saw myself reflected in a lot of the students that were there, at that conference, and said, okay, I'm ready I'm ready to take that next step in my life.
Is there a part of you that kind of drives you? I was just we can talk about this off the record eventually, once we're done. But there's something that I've got in the works that is hoping to serve some of the Valley, the El Paso, some of the underserved. I'm not going to say underprivileged. It's just underserved, and some of that has to do with geography. It has nothing to do with anything other than they're just far away. Texas is big. But is there a part of you that wants to make sure that you are doing this to serve those populations in those areas, or is it just I want to get out there and be an educator and just make a difference? I don't care whose life I'm helping or changing. I just want to do it.
I've already told myself that if I'm going to accept a teaching job, the first job's going to be in the Valley,
Okay.
the Rio Grande Valley. One, there is a rich theater, culture down there. It's mainly there at the kind of the larger schools, but also, I saw that the state competition this past year, the 4-5 and the 6A competitions, I believe it was one of the Valley schools that perform a zoot suit there, and just seeing the students feel a sense of pride, want to be competing with the top, 8 schools in the state, but just also pride of their identity. Said, okay, I need to teach in the Valley, because a lot of students, I don't know what the statistic is now, but back when I was in high school, I think Brownsville was on the top list of uneducated cities in America. So it's okay, what does that mean in terms of resources, like you said, or opportunities? I know now there's different programs or different opportunities in Harlingen that may have like a performing arts type of conservatory, or that they have larger kind of communal productions, or a lot of students are now kind of turning to the community theater, so now I don't know if I'm making sense, but I just want to
It does.
to to play a part in providing more opportunities or just bringing more awareness of other theater opportunities for students that live in the Valley.
All right, so this interruption is your tech tip. This week's tech tip is more the UIL 1 Act Play tip. I've already talked to a number of directors about what's allowed, what's this, what's that. And I will say this, check your 26th edition of the UIL 1 Act Play guidelines, right? And always check that. It is sometimes intentionally vague, okay? It is sometimes intentionally vague. Now, you can always, and I highly recommend you should always email Paula Rodriguez and get clarification, even if it's something that is mundane and dumb and you just think that it's a dumb question to ask. You are not wasting her time. She is there for you. Even I had to text her this week because I had an issue, and she was quick to respond and checked up on the resolution and all that stuff. So she is there for you, but don't feel like you are bothering her. And make sure you are checking that handbook, though, because it does have a lot of very useful information and laid out very well. Yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, I've talked with, and I'm sure you may have talked with Luis Munoz. Luis Munoz is like a hardcore, big time source and advocate for getting to these underserved areas that really it's very difficult to do. And I know like Texas Thespians has made an attempt and successfully has done successfully been out to like El Paso to do their leadership conferences, and they have junior festival out there. It's a pared down version, so it's not expensive, but not a lot has happened down down in the Valley. It's almost like we go to Corpus or somebody goes to Corpus and they're like, well, we're close enough. And that's,
Sure.
that's become sort of a bone of contention in my mind, because we're not close. It's still not that close. If they're not making their way to Houston, or even like a Galveston, they're not going to, Corpus is not that much better. It's still a trek. And so,
There, there's something interesting there,
Yep.
and it's not an attack on you or the way that the different conferences are scheduled. But if folks from Lubbock are able to make their way to Galveston, or folks from Corpus are able to make their way to Rockwall, it's like is McAllen not an option?
Mm.
And to say that, and you can completely delete the section off from the interview.
It's up to you.
But it's like, what, by saying that we have less, or that we're going to have a condensed version, does that actually not do a disservice to the students and the
Right.
teachers that are there? It's like a lot of the Valley schools and the high school that I went to, and I think all of the high schools in Brownsville have one high school director, to compete, and I think that's probably why some schools haven't advanced in the last few years, outside of their kind of area, just because it's like you said, underfunded or under-resourced opportunities like that.
Yeah.
And mind you, there's also I think some things that need to happen with the more valuing of fine arts at the district level, in order to support artists that want to go to professional development, such as in Galveston or in the Dallas area and the Grapevine, kind of conferences.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's just an interesting kind of opportunity to continue expanding the work, and I think that's why, when I'm going to school right now, it's though it's quote a master's, I want to be good at what I'm doing. So, the idea of getting either an MA and an educational theater, or pursuing another master's in educational leadership in order to kind of take that transition, or to help transition that mentality in the Valley, is something that's definitely crossed my mind.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with you. I think part of the pare down, at least initially, to go to El Paso for Texas Thespians was just to see if there's an interest in it, and there
Hmm.
was, and I think that so I think it's going to build up over the next couple of years, and so long as there's an interest, they'll keep going.
Right.
But yeah, I think it was just the the financial element of it, and also with some of these things, since there are students involved, I'm sure there are other elements. I do think that something needs to go south. I know this is a deeper conversation than than people, but maybe not. I don't know. But I do think that something needs to go south. I think West is uh, viewed as a little different than the South. As far as like, why not go to McAllen or places like that compared to El Paso? I just, there's something that sounds bigger about El Paso, especially to Texans. We know El
Hmm.
Paso. It's what they were even in the Pace Picane ads for so many years in the '90s, and so there's just something about that area that's just bigger, more commercial, I guess,
Right.
than there is with McAllen and Harlingen and things like that. So it's interesting. I'd love to get down there and do more work down there personally. It's just well, we'll talk in a minute, but
Yeah.
we'll talk off the record. So when you mentioned that when you came back here from Cleveland, which, by the way, uh, I'm a big fan of Cleveland, especially because the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But I don't know if you went or not, but on your $100 a week. But Cleveland's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool town. But when you came back here, you had quite the title, so much, your job title, so much so that you kind of, for a second forgot it because it's was like a 10-word title. But did you feel some sort of pressure as a 21, 22-year old at that point? You would probably call a 21-year-old a kid now. Did you feel some sort of pressure as kind of like, they're putting a lot of responsibility on me? Were you confident enough to do those jobs, or was there a stress a little bit? Did you have any sort of imposter syndrome at any point, or I mean, like, how was that for you being so young?
Never imposter syndrome. But I think there at the beginning, you know, or let me start by saying that our staff has always been small, which is one nonprofit theater, and it's not culturally specific in the fact that nonprofit theaters, and small or institutions have a small staff, right? So by having those kind of multiple responsibilities, um, made me kind of have, I spent late nights those first couple of months to say I need to understand one, the organization, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done just in order to have a fundraising campaign, in order to break down um, different kind of contacts, or just the way that we're reaching out to schools. There's a lot of legwork that needs to be done. And sometimes it's like, even now we'll have days where it feels like we're working 7 days a week, or even though we'll get in the office late at 11 o'clock, we're still going to be at rehearsal there till 11 o'clock at night. So never imposter syndrome, but just kind of I think that pressure was, I put that pressure on myself because as a culturally specific organization that serves communities of color, it's like that work is necessary, and if we're not, if I felt at the beginning, if I'm not doing my work or my part in order to contribute, there's going to be students that aren't going to be able to benefit off of our services.
Do you know Claudia Vasquez? What is her married name? Claudia
Jenkins.
Ramirez. Claudia DeVasco. Claudia DeVasco. Which that's her married name. But Claudia Vasquez, she is at the Public in San Antonio. Um,
Yes, I believe she just started that position.
yeah,
Not.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's been about a year now, but yeah,
Mhm.
she's the artistic director over there. Anyway, she and I went to high school together, so we've known each other for quite a long time. But you two need to hook up, because you guys have very similar mindsets and very similar styles, and from just what I understand. But yeah, I need to get you two sort of hooked up and talking to each other. But she's an awesome person, and she's doing really amazing work for that theater in San Antonio. And it's work that's kind of late, I guess. Delay, I don't know what took. It's not her fault, but I don't know what
Mhm.
took so long for some of that to be recognized in that city, especially because it's just like,
Right.
you know, again,
I mean, it's San Antonio. I mean, I think that this past year they just started introducing or starting had their first productions of, I think it was um may have been Barrio Girl, by Roxanne Schroeder Arce, and then I think American Mariachi in that
yeah,
space, so it's to say these are the first kind of quote, Latinx, Latino, Latina, Latine plays that we are doing in this space in San Antonio, especially with their long history.
yeah,
It's kind of mind-boggling, but I think that that's also a a larger conversation just about city ran, or city entities, or city got funded, or city departments, through
right.
like their Office of Arts and Culture. What does that mean? And we have these conversations all the time in Dallas. Internally, it's like, okay, what do certain actions or certain programs actually mean for the larger, picture for the city of Dallas?
I was looking at the Carmia, and I'm saying that wrong. I'm saying a very white Jewish white boy, but you have this on the website. It's like
Hmm.
right there, the very first picture being, and I don't know if you can see behind. Oh, wrong hand. I don't know if you can see behind me, but all these are wrestling figures. So, and you have this, I guess, luchadora, a female
Hmm.
luchador picture. What is this?
Sure. Yeah. So it's kind of wild to think it was at the beginning of this year. We produced a Luchadora by Alvaro Sar Rios. And I think a lot of schools may be familiar with the play, but yeah, we produced Luchadora with an exclamation point at the end of the name,
Huh.
at the end of the title. But we that was one of the shows that I don't think I've ever been more stressed about in my life. But that's just because we were going on I think the Omicron virus,
Uh,
the variant. So it's the amount of testing, the amount of money we spent on testing, but just the amount of work that was being put into it to make sure that we can do the production successfully and have an actual run. um if we ended up having only doing 3 public performances,
right.
that all had pretty full, if not sold out houses. But even that last performance, I was like, please, everybody test negative. It's like, it'd be a shame if we did all this work just for it to get canceled, that last performance. But yeah, we did it earlier in January. I think it opened around or it started in January, and then it opened around Valentine's
Okay.
weekend or week.
It looks really cool. I need to read up on that one because, I mean, I would never do it at my school. My school doesn't do plays that have any sort of challenging content.
I don't know, Blake. Beauty and the Beast. They got a whole wolf scene in there.
Yeah,
I
we
the
got to cut it.
Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Well, that wasn't my school. That was
Oh,
yeah, that was a side. That's my side piece. But
oh,
but yeah, I will have to read up on this. We're struggling to get Almost Maine produced. So if that's
oh,
yeah, that's a whole nother story too.
yeah. Well,
Um,
the good thing is that we filmed it professionally and have it available
oh,
for
nice,
distribution.
nice.
So yeah, the um we hired Gloria Vivica Benavides, who is a professional actor and director in Dallas. And then she moved on. She, in the middle of the show, was like, I just got a great opportunity to go work with Brian Quijada on a brand new musical somewhere over the border. And so at that point, the assistant director, Chris Ramirez, who's also a member of the Dallas Theater Center's company, took on as the kind of co-director
Right.
on that. And Chris is a big lucha libre, WWE fan, so he was like, "This is my wheelhouse. I got this going."
Yeah.
The fight choreographer was an actual lucha libre wrestler, so it was a great show.
Yeah, I feel like that's the kind of show I would I would really I would excel with. Maybe I could direct that one because I used to do some backyard wrestling back in my day, so I feel like I'd be really good. Well, I want to get you out of here on a couple more things.
Sure.
What is it that from your professional side of things, your professional world, whether that be business or artistic, that that you will struggle with when you enter education? What I mean by that is I came from a performing arts high school, and that was really the apex of my education in theater at that at the point when I entered education. Not that UH wasn't a great space for me. It's just it wasn't HSPVA. Um, and so I struggled my first couple of years with I want everything to be HSPVA. I want it to be exactly how I learned, and that just wasn't reality. Because there's a reason there's an HSPVA and then the rest of the world. So, what is
Right.
it that you think you might kind of enter education with, just kind of knowing I might have a tough time letting go of this or trying to convert this into education into the educational world?
Um, I think if there's going to be any problem or any kind of difficulties is when it comes to patients. The
Okay.
last few years, you know, I get to help write the contracts and make offers to professional actors. So all of a sudden, to get that into high school students that, like me, I'm sure are balancing all the different extracurricular activities, and for some of them having to be an additional um, a parent figure in their household. I think it's going to be the patience and just making sure that there's room for flexibility in there. You know, I think I have a good sense of timing and kind of knowing where we are, on this projects. But yeah, I think that's just going to be something for me to have to reconfigure my brain around. Just making sure that if we need an extra week, for production or for, or if, to start working on things, how does that kind of that kind of insight, start affecting other things? It's okay. Am I gonna have to adjust here? Where am I gonna adjust? So I think that'll be kind of my spot
Yeah.
to to grow on.
And then finally, um what is it I'm trying to figure out the question I have is in my head, and it has to do with the final steps you think you need to take to be to excel in education, to excel in a classroom, to excel as an educational director. And I don't know what the question is. I don't know how to frame
Sure.
it, but it's kind of sometimes my brain does not want to work. But I guess I'm wondering from you, because I did just have a conversation with somebody on the podcast actually about how alternative certification is completely different than when I went through it in 2007, and my wife about the same time, a year later. But we had 10 days. We watched videos of Harry Wong, and like after that, we took a content test, and that was pretty much it. I think we had a pedagogy test a year later, or we did. I don't think we did. We did. So that was like those were the steps of learning how to be an educator. What do you think? What are the personal things that Matthew wants to do before you ultimately take that leap? Because you've already started. You've already started running towards the cliff. What is
Mhm.
it that you want to make sure you get before you jump off? Does that make sense? Is that
Ooh,
I mean,
it does,
my brain
but
is weird.
the
Yeah.
it's the programs. From what you're describing seems a lot different now.
Yes.
I'm trying to a majority of my assignments now, but because of one being in grad school, but it also feels like I'm getting another master's in
Yeah.
terms of the content or the work. It could also be that I'm in the middle of moving, but it does require time to do all these different modules,
Yeah.
and then to take the PPR test before you're able to take the content test, or it's um, I'm enjoying my time doing it slowly.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate to be an adjudicator through Total this upcoming spring semester. So I'm not going to be accepting any positions, in the spring. So that means that I'm going to take my time to really do that certification program versus like trying to rush it in
Right.
a month or two just because I'm trying to get a job. That's not my goal. So I'm trying to be as intentional and as mindful as possible to make sure I'm taking my time so that, again, I'm giving the best to my future students,
Yeah.
whether that's just practices or theories, but it doesn't do anybody it's just a disinterest to those future students if I'm kind of rushing through their possible teacher, and learning how to develop or how to formulate my curriculum around TEKS and all that.
Yeah, so I don't want to end on that. That was boring. Not the part that you said, but I mean that's not inspiration. I don't feel inspired. So let's end with something a little more
Sure.
inspirational. Not that what you said that was rude, but it wasn't. Your answer wasn't boring. Okay, I like to end with inspiration, and
Sure.
here's why you should do what you do. You are smart. You seem to
Thank
have
you.
everything kind of figured out, and you are someone that comes across as, I know what I want. Here's how I'm going to get it, and I'm going to take the proper steps and the time and all that stuff to achieve my goals. You also seem like somebody that might get bored with, because I'm that same way. So if you were to make a 10, 15, 20-year plan, and I don't want this to incriminate you in any way and be like, well, he said that in 15 years he's going to be doing this, so let's hold him to it. But what is it that's going to keep you, keep your taste for the arts and education and theater and even trombone playing? What is it that's going to keep you kind of involved and interested and passionate? Do you have an answer for that, or do you not know until you kind of need to approach that bridge?
One, I probably won't know until I get there, but in theory, the theory of it all, I'm always looking to better myself. Whether that means becoming, go and getting a PhD one day in 15 years, whether that means becoming a director of fine arts or a supervisor in that kind of capacity. I just want to make sure that I'm always putting my best self forward, and making sure that students that I'm going to impact have the best possible teacher, administrator, confidant that they will have.
Minor wisdom.